So, I've already shared my list of the top 10 best movies of 2021, linked down below, which means now it's time for the worst. Ooh, I usually don't like making this list. In fact, in past years, I haven't made it because, people worked on these movies all up and down. We're not just talking about above the line, but below the line. And I actually heard behind the scenes, in some cases, people knew they were making bad movies on some of these. It's a tough business, but they can't all be gems. But this is the worst of the bunch, in my opinion. And I have to tell you, this year, I didn't have a hard time finding 10 movies that I thought were bad. And we're even still during a pandemic, so there are less movies coming out. But yeah, did not care for these. I'm excited to hear your own lists down below, and while you're down there, hit subscribe. Start off 2022 right, as we've got a whole exciting year of new movies ahead of us. All right, the rules, just so you know the rules for yourself and when you're thinking about what I put on my list. The film has to be in this year's awards window, not the calendar year, and it has to have played in theaters, even just a little bit. All right, number 10, Eternals. I had to do it. I didn't hate this movie. I said everyone should see it, but I said I would never watch it again. Maybe I'd watch sections of it again. It's not good. But the reason it just barely made this list is because Marvel should have known better. I mean, that's one of the real shame. A lot of these movies are a damn shame. All the problems with Eternals should have been spotted in development, when it was just a glimmer in Kevin Feige's eye, and either been fixed or they should not have made the movie at all. We've got passive characters, we have too many characters, no tie into the rest of the MCU whatsoever. I mean, maybe retroactively they might be able to fix it, but it just seemed like a waste of our time when Kevin Feige's dance card is already too full, and a lack of action. I mean, I think Kevin Feige gave Chloe Zhao too much reverence. We always talk about studio suits versus talent, but it's a series of checks and balances. I think it's not a good idea to just get rid of the suits. You get suits who have real value to add as producers, and then everything works out, I think, very well. Still, it does have some great performances, stunning visuals, and I think the VFX were very well executed. So that's why it's number 10. Number 9, House of Gucci. I had to do it. And now, to be clear, I really loved Lady Gaga's performance here, and I don't include her in this at all. I think she carried the entire film. She's the only reason to see it. But otherwise, the performances are cartoonish. There's not enough meat to his role to balance out all the cheese Jared Leto is serving here. And Al Pacino, he just boringly embarrassed himself. And speaking of boring, the movie gets super boring about halfway in. I watched it in a theater at a press screening, and I had a very hard time focusing. I think it was the only time I watched a press screening where I was like, I wish I had my phone. Well, I did, but I wish I could look at it because I was bored. I mean, the movie decides to totally shift focus from Lady Gaga's Patrizia to the Gucci family instead. And I know that's what the book did, but the movie didn't have to make the same mistake. And it's even a very interesting true story. So again, it's a shame that they did such a bad job telling it. Number 8, Halloween Kills. Total filler movie. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, if they didn't have a way to make a trilogy, if they didn't have enough story, they should have just made 2 movies. This was just like a longer trailer for the final film next year. I mean, there are some nice components here that I enjoyed, but it's not enough to warrant the whole film. And everyone's making fun of Jared Leto's performance this year, but I thought Jamie Lee Curtis did a lot of scenery chewing as well. Sometimes actors need to be directed. Sometimes you do not let them just do whatever they want. Jamie Lee Curtis, I thought, was also clownish in this film. Number 7, The Boss Baby 2. I loved the original Boss Baby, so I was particularly disappointed that this sequel was so bad, pretty much unwatchable. They threw too much stuff into the mix, forgetting that people are showing up to see baby Jack Donaghy from 30 Rock. They also totally missed an opportunity to explore the adult lives not only of our 2 brothers, but the other babies made even more popular by the ongoing series, which is one of the reasons they even made a sequel, because people like the show. And then they just totally ignored all that. Not good. Number 6, The Matrix Resurrections. You know it deserves to be on this list. Did I chuckle at some of the meta jokes, business jokes? Of course I did. Was it fun to see Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss back again in their iconic roles? Of course. But let's face it, Lana Wachowski made one popular movie, and she can't make lightning strike twice. She's had a lot of chances, too. And that Warner Brothers wants to keep her for a 5th movie? That's insane. Let's see what Discovery has to say. And for Pete's sake, bring back Hugo Weaving and Lawrence Fishburne. It's ridiculous. Number 5, The French Dispatch. Talk about unwatchable. Yikes, this was painful. Another movie I saw in a theater, and I was like, for a screening, and I was like, and I was so excited, and I was like, this is so bad. As I said in my review, maybe it's a little better if you watch the short story separately, because it's a series of shorts. And Timothée Chalamet and Jeffrey Wright helped a lot. They were really good. But the rest of the movie, talk about self-indulgent. And it was so speaking of that, so overwritten, hard to tell what people were saying most of the time. Wes Anderson went full Wes Anderson, and that was a very bad idea. Number 4, I'd be interested, by the way, if some of you want to defend some of these movies. That would be really interesting as well. I'd be very curious to hear a defense of any of these films. All right, number 4, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Another huge disappointment, as the first film was so fun. I was one of the few people who defended that first movie. That's the strength of the first movie is like one of the only reasons that the sequel did well at the box office. Andy Serkis is running out of chances to prove that he can make a commercially viable film. I think he's a pretty good director, but he's not commercial. Again, it was a big hit, I think, because of love for the first film. People loved Tom Hardy in the role, and also that end credit scene. It was all about that end credit scene. That was a new phenomenon in 2021, end credit scenes that are better than the movie. Woody Harrelson, great casting as Carnage, but they hardly used him. Total waste of time, this movie. Nothing really happens for the entire thing. It was ridiculous. Number 3, Space Jam: A New Legacy, which I know some people enjoyed. And I have nothing but respect for LeBron James, who's had tremendous success, not just in basketball, but in Hollywood. This movie did pretty good. It's certainly one of the higher performers for the Warner Brothers HBO Max dual release strategy this year. And he produces a lot of other television that's quite successful. And then also he does so much to give back. Very commendable. But this movie was bad. This movie I felt was really, really bad. All over the place, too meta, too many references, so it doesn't have time to do anything with them. You'll see a reference you like and be like, can we stop? And they're like, no, we have more references to do. And I think focusing on all of Warner Brothers turned out to be a really bad idea. Speaking of Warner Brothers, that's 2 movies on this list where Warner Brothers, the talent they're working with, made them the villain in the movie. I think, and I have to say, these movies are on this list, so Warner Brothers can't be that wrong in maybe some of their requests, but that's weird. They should stop approving scripts where they're made to look buffoonish. And also, they had nothing on the level of the Bill Murray surprise cameo from the first film, and I don't think it did the movie any favors that Michael Jordan wanted nothing to do with it, that he wouldn't come back. They had that other thing, but it just called attention to the fact that Michael Jordan wasn't there. Number 2, Reminiscence. Oh yeah. This played in theaters, but also on HBO Max. A third film, but I don't think they made fun of Warner Brothers in this movie. But anyway, it was so bad. I watched it on HBO Max, and I described it in my review as J. Crew film noir. It was the best lit film noir film I've ever seen, and film noir ain't supposed to be well lit. No stakes, just a total embarrassment for everyone involved. It was like watching a horrible student film. That's how bad it was. And these are very professional people. Wow. Total lack of self-awareness, again, on everyone's part. On everyone. It was just a huge embarrassment. And then they had ridiculous stuff in the movie, because it was also an environmental tale. The water level's raised. And you're like, how did the rich people build that dam after the water was raised? You know how impossible it would be to do that in the dystopian future that you've otherwise presented? Also, how do buildings function totally normally if the lower half of them is submerged in water? How does the electricity still work? How do you get to the controls for the electricity and everything? Because that's usually in the basement. It was just so stupid. And then number 1, I bet we all have the same number 1. And if you don't have this number 1, you probably forgot it came out this year. And then you'll be like, oh yeah, that's number 1. And that's Dear Evan Hansen. So awful, truly awful, and so disturbing. All the problems of the musical, it seems, because, I didn't see the musical, but we talked about this a lot. And, a lot of you weighed in who were fans even of the musical. All the problems that you were able to ignore live on stage became inescapable when they were plastered on the big screen and we zoomed in close. And Ben Platt coming back to, his being so much older than the role really, I think, also highlighted how creepy the role truly was. His father produced the film, big Hollywood producer. He insisted that his son return, and I think he ended up maybe ruining his son's career in the process. It was just another tone-deaf film. All right, so that's my list of the top 10 worst movies of 2021. I'm excited to hear your own thoughts down below. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.